One of the most crucial pillars to planning and executing an adventure is your snacks. Anyone that's done an adventure knows that you are ravishing food, and it's important that you're filling your body with quality snacks and not just junk food. And I've made that mistake way too many times. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about our newest sponsor, Wonderful Pistachios. Pistachios are a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids and one of the highest protein snack nuts. And also, unlike meat, protein-powered pistachios are naturally cholesterol-free and add fiber to your day. And not only that, they're really filling, so it's none of those empty calories that you get with a lot of other snack food. And it's super versatile as well. I just had some on a salad literally 10 minutes ago, and I had some as a snack this afternoon. And you can get them different ways. You can get them lightly salted, roasted, sweet chili, salt and pepper, and you can get them traditionally in shell or no shell. So if you're interested, visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
School is back, and so is the JCPenney Mystery Sale. How much will you save? Hurry in store for a coupon giveaway while they last. You could peel and reveal an extra 30, 40, or even 50% off store-wide. Sale ends Sunday. Extended store hours Friday and Saturday. Shopping is back, and the savings are too. JCPenney. Coupon valid on select styles through 8/7. Exclusions apply. Giveaway in-store only. Must be 18 years or older. See store or jcp.com for details. Do it!
Hey folks, today we're doing a throwback episode. This goes back to, holy cow, 2019. I cannot believe it has been that long since Jordon was on the show. To my really good friend, Jordon Wolfram. He is true adventurer, is definitely someone who takes advantage of the time he has, makes it happen. He's an adventure machine, squeezes adventure out of every business trip, and every time he travels with family or any time he has, he's always doing something. If you have heard about those trips that I'm doing every 8 weeks, we planted a little adventure with anyone that wants to go in this area. We live in Central Florida now, and we do like a river paddling trip. It's been a lot of river trips lately. Some bike packing trips, some hiking trips. Every 8 weeks we plan something, and we invite as many people as want to go as we can go. If there's limits on the camping site, that's like the only limit there is. But we've got extra equipment, and the trips are growing every time we go. We're getting upwards of like 20, 30 people in these things. And our next one is in August, the end of August. If you want to go, reach out to me. I'll happily give you details. You're totally welcome. They're usually 2 full days of paddling or bike packing. And Jordon is one of my friends that we always plan these trips with. So it's Jordon, my other friend Paul, and now a lot of other people. But Jordon's a great friend of mine is what I'm trying to say. And I'm also trying to give you an update on these things we do. The next one after August will be in October near Ocala National Forest. We're going to do a big group site. So we've got up to 50 people at that one that we can get. So if you want to go, that's, I think, Columbus Day weekend. Please let me know. Be happy to have you. And we're going to do all kinds of stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. But this next trip, into this month if you want to go. But anyway, Jordon's a great friend of mine. This adventure we're talking about right now is bike touring the length of New Zealand. He literally did like north all the way to south. But Jordon and I have done bike packing trips all across the country, the Colorado Trail, stuff like that. And a lot of things around here. So I loved this conversation. I can't believe it was almost 3 years ago now. That's just insane to me. Yeah, it was almost exactly 3 years ago. But anyway, time flies when you're having fun, I guess. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. But yeah, people kind of already heard, like, you are one of the most interesting people I know. One of my best friends for sure. And we've done a lot of adventures together. But to be honest, I hear kind of bits and stories of like your early life where you started, but it's always these just crazy stories, but I don't know how to put it all together. You know what I mean? Chronologically, I know you're spent time in Ecuador and Canada and Florida, but I don't know how it all works together. So if you don't mind, what was your childhood like, and where did you grow up, and also, what kind of sports were you doing then? Because this is all news to me, really.
Yeah, it's I got lucky overall with childhood.
Okay.
I always liked being outdoors and being active, but really I have my dad and even my mom to thank for they moved us around a few times, and they're both pretty active people. So I kind of like you grew up originally in the Florida area, played soccer, did a lot of the stuff around here, lots of time at the beach, kayaking, and had fun, but also got to spend pretty much every summer until I was 10 in Colorado for 2 to 4 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I have to remember, like Manitou area.
Yep, right at the base of Pikes Peak there. So I remember being like 8 years old one day and deciding I'm going to climb Pikes Peak at like 2 in the afternoon, getting up to halfway or whatever, that bar trail or something. I forget what it's called. It's a little past the top of Manitou, and it's like getting dark, and you're like 8 years old, and it's like, oh yeah, we should probably turn around before parents worry where we're at.
Oh my gosh, man. That's what I'm saying. You always got these crazy stories, but I didn't know that. So it was kind of just all over the place, doing stuff in Colorado. What else did you do?
Well, that was actually, Colorado was fun because that's where my dad taught us to rappel off a little mountain there. So again, real young, he would put a rope around you, and at the time I was so light, you had to like bounce your way down the rope because the figure eight didn't have enough friction versus my weight to rappel me down. So I got really, really comfortable at a young age just with just climbing and being outdoors, rappelling, so heights, and always enjoyed it though. It was never like pushed on me. It was always, oh, let's go do this, and rappelling and hiking became just a means to be out there.
Did you get into traditional climbing at that point, or was it more rappelling strictly?
I quite frankly haven't done a ton of traditional climbing. I've climbed a handful of pretty tall mountains, but none of them have required real intense technicality. The thing I got into it climbing for a good while was when my family moved to Ecuador, which is where my dad's from. I got into with him what we called canyoneering. I think it's a little different than what most people think of with canyoneering though.
Why is that?
So I lived more in the rainforest part of Ecuador, but it's right where the Andes Mountains slope down into the Amazon, and you get these really steep river valleys, and they're just beautiful, and it rains almost every day there. And basically any river running down the side of the valley it's dropping several thousand feet of elevation. And so they just be little streams. They're tiny. And we would just start from kind of the highway that wound its way through the bigger valley, one of the feeder rivers of the Amazon. And you would just kind of look at the mountain and be like, I bet that river's chock full of waterfalls. So you park the car, and we didn't have fancy equipment. It was like a 20 or 30 foot kind of thick cotton rope that was easy to grab, and sometimes harnesses and maybe a little pack with some snacks, and we'd just start going, and you hike up the river for a while, and then you might climb a couple easy waterfalls real fast, and then there might be a real big one, and so you'd have to work together to kind of half free climb, but you're tying off of each other and working your way up that waterfall. Or sometimes it just wasn't climbable, at least at our skill level, right away, and so you kind of sneak your way around it, climbing the vegetation on the side, and then dropping a rope from the top and belaying the next person to see if they can do it. So,
dang, man. How long did you say you were living in Ecuador?
I lived there for 5 years, basically high school.
Okay.
So it was a really, really fun time though, because in high school I was active in sports, pretty fit, you could say, and so it was an awesome time to get into that. It was kind of an outlet too. Moving to Ecuador was not easy, and so those Saturdays where I would go canyoning, it just kind of helped set the rest of the week.
And you got into soccer while you were down there too. It's probably hard not to.
Basically, soccer. I might think that I was better than I was.
You? No. Not Jordan.
No, I played a lot. Ended up kind of switching from defender to working my way back to goalie. I was tall and quick. And then from that, over time, didn't really end up playing beyond high school, but always loved the sport. It did tear up my knees a lot, though.
Yeah. Isn't it like, what do you have? Is it patellar tendonitis or what?
Yeah. So I know you also deal with a lot of knee stuff. I think it's tall, skinny people. It's like a problem for us. So I basically had no muscle mass around my knees, even though I was, running and all that stuff a lot. And my patellar tendons, both of them, just got really shredded. They never actually snapped, but to this day, I just have to be really, really careful with that particular tendon. I don't deal with, a lot of people have ankle issues, or a lot of people have the what's the long one on the side of your leg? Real long one on the side of your knee that a lot of cyclists deal with.
So, what did the knee injuries cause you to do? Because I know, did you get into biking down there when you were down there, or did you wait until you got back to the States?
I always rode my bike around town when I was in Ecuador, but that was it, and always liked it. Had a little, mongoose that I'd haul down there. It was fun. But it wasn't actually till I went to Southeastern University, same as Mason.
Mm-hmm.
You probably don't want that announced, do you?
I don't care. Are you kidding me? I don't care.
No, it was a good time, and I would play a lot of intramural soccer, and one day I played like soccer and ran a couple miles, and I almost couldn't walk because of how bad my patellar was. It was messed up. So really didn't do any activity for 3 months, even though I was dying to, other than just kind of going to the gym and doing some upper body stuff. But that blessing and a curse, it got me into biking, because biking is just so much less pressure on your knees than running and soccer and stuff.
So you got into biking. When was that? Because then we met at some point, and I had an idea like, hey, let's bike across the West. And I think we met at like an Applebee's or something with James, and you were eating like quesadillas, and like, who is this Jordon guy to have all these crazy stories? And then it led to us doing a trip together.
Prior to that conversation, I'd never done any what you could call significant biking. My favorite story to tell, because this is so like, you work with what you have. So there's local trails here in Lakeland called Carter Road, and they're like 8 miles of duney mountain bike trails. And this is Florida, so nothing crazy. But it'll make you work. And the only bike I had around at the time was a beach cruiser that you had to pedal backwards on the brake. You're going over these like super skid walls, trying to jam the brake back, and then you hit an uphill, and it's so steep. At one point, the beach cruisers had the big wide handlebars.
Yeah.
I pulled up so hard on the handlebar to get enough force to get up a hill, I broke the handlebar off.
Some Walmart beach cruisers, man. Oh my gosh, that's what I like about you, is it just don't matter. You just take whatever you got and go for it, which has led to some cool stuff. It can get you in trouble sometimes, but more times than not, it's pretty awesome stories. All right, so you took a beach cruiser out to Carter Road. I'm familiar with that place. Yeah, not ideal. If for anyone that don't know, it's not ideal for out there. And then what? What started happening in the adventure world for you?
Well, then I met Mason, and my whole life changed forever.
Oh, come on, shut up, man.
No, Mason talked me into, I think, so people like yourself, I think, tell a lot of stories, or not tell a lot of stories, but you had just come back from this amazing Alaska 5,000 mile trip, total rugged wilderness, and then you had just done a trip from basically Orlando to Maine, right?
Yeah, it was, I think a month East Coast. A lot more quaint and subdued than the Alaska trip, for sure. It was cake in comparison.
Wow. And so I'm just hearing you telling these stories, and I've been working at my first, I guess, quote unquote, adult job for about a year, and was loving it. I'm someone, I really do enjoy work, but when I hear these stories, it was just so inspiring, and I'm like, man, I like to bicycle, and Mason made it you made it too tempting. You're like, yeah, well, I have a bike you can use, because at the time you were just wandering around like national parks after completing the Tour Divide. And for some reason you were in town, right?
I think I was back home for something. Took a break in the middle. I know my dad had surgery during that trip and I had to come home for that. I don't know if it was then or before I even left, the summer before.
I'm not sure. And we were decent friends at this time. Didn't know each other too well, but I got inspired, and you took away all the obstacles, and so it just came to the point, you know what, I have to say yes, or else I just look like I was leading you on.
Yeah, man, we started planning, and you flew out, and we did, man, just Colorado. You flew into the Denver International Airport. For anyone that's ever been there, it's almost in Kansas. It is out there. And you put your bike together there and rode it into town like 20 miles. And I was coming out of Estes Park, and we met in Denver. That day was, what was it, like 15 degrees outside the day we started? It was solid winter.
Tons of snow on the ground too.
It was miserable.
I wasn't used to a road bike at the time. I'd been pedaling to get some exercise to be ready. But yeah, that first day, I remember my shoes, the water would splash up the water on the road would splash up, and it got on my shoes and it froze while we're pedaling. And I'm like, whew, here goes 3 more weeks of this.
Oh my gosh. And then we biked up to Manitou, and your crucial connections got us a nice little warm cabin to stay in that night, which was honestly needed after such a cold, miserable day.
Yeah, and that was a cool trip, though. I mean, that was so eye-opening for me. I think we went to, like 6 or 7 national parks, just kind of snaking along Colorado and Utah, or...
Yeah, all of them in Utah. The first time I'd ever been to Moab, you talked me into renting a bike and mountain biking, like shuttling up to the top of like the La Salle Mountains and mountain biking down a trail. It was probably one of the best experiences of my life. And I don't know, man, that was a great time, because I didn't know what I was doing. And I mean, you were just so interesting to talk to. You'd be pedaling next to me all day, just chatting. You're chatty. Telling these crazy stories. I'm like, who is this guy, Jordan? But then we finish the trip, man, and I continue on, or you finish and you go back to work, and then I don't know what happened, because you planned a huge trip after that, where I was like, wow, this guy is going far beyond this little trip we did together.
Yeah, so that first bike trip really gave me the bug to want to tour, and what I'd enjoyed from that was the pace was so slow, and people would stop and talk to you, and you really had to soak in not just the sites that you went to, but the ride along the way. You realized how beautiful sections were. So I went back to work. It actually probably was a good 6 months or so. I was back at work, and I started feeling out a trip. I wanted to do something that was biking related, and it just happened at the time. I had a very good friend, Bo, who was living in Japan. I had a friend who thought he was available to be in New Zealand, and I had a friend living in China. So I started piecing those together and looking at flights, and didn't have a lot of money at the time, but said, I can do this. I want to kind of piece this route together, and ended up pulling the trigger, with the highlight being I took my Specialized rock hopper that I'd bought for $200, and it was a mountain bike I'd been using for about a year and a half. A super solid bike, kind of heavy, a little bit small for me, but I threw that in a box along with some panniers and a backpack. Flew out to Japan for 10 days or so and had an awesome time with a buddy there, mostly snowboarding. And then after some big hassles, flew out to New Zealand, into Auckland, which is way up on the north side of New Zealand. And it was a rough start. So the purpose of that trip was, or at least the goal of that trip was, to bike from Auckland, New Zealand, way up on the North Island, and go to the very southernmost point. But I was on a mountain bike, so I wanted to make sure to stop and do hiking and actually do like local single track. So just, there were lots of mountain bike parks along the way. You might not have heard this, but I landed. I had been sick, horribly sick, for during the entire flight. Like, I left Japan with this crazy fever, had a huge hassle getting my bike and just different stuff to the airport, and visa issues. And I land in the airport, I build my bike, and I pedal just far enough outside of Auckland. I never even went into Auckland because the airport's on the south side, to like literally find a little grove on the side of the road where nobody would bother me. And I just like put up my tent and slept for a day and a half.
Oh, man. No, I didn't know that, dude. Golly. What an introduction.
Yeah, it was that was rough, and it left me very weak. So it made the first couple days of cycling kind of slow, but just it also hit the ground running, and I ended up spending I had like 46 days in New Zealand. It took about a week to get my stride. I will say that like the first week was very beautiful, saw some amazing sights, but just a little bit like stressful figuring out where to pitch a tent, like how to talk to the locals. Obviously they speak English there, but like it just, I'd done a lot of research, read a lot of books, but you don't know like the style of the country, if that makes sense.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. When it comes to watching the big game, every second counts, especially if you are missing even a moment of the action to go for a drink run. Luckily, there's Drizzly. It's the #1 app for alcohol delivery. Y'all know I work for a brewery. It's non-alcoholic beer, so we can ship it right to your house. But you can't do that with other brands. But now you can with Drizzly. You can shop local stores, compare the prices over a huge selection of beer, wine, spirits, and get it all delivered to your house in under 60 minutes. Or you can schedule it up to 2 weeks in advance. So if you're throwing a big party, have it all ready to go. Talk about a slam dunk. They also make it very easy to send those as a gift. You can literally gift people that alcohol right to your friends, family, for whatever occasion, even if that occasion is rubbing in their face that their team lost. In your face, other team. So if you're looking to spend more time watching the game, download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today.
With Eversense, the long-term sensor helps me spend less time dealing with my CGM. I only need 2 sensor changes a year.
If you're on multiple doses of insulin, you might greatly benefit from the Eversense E3 CGM system, the only continuous glucose monitoring system that lasts for up to 6 months with 1 sensor. Still doing frequent sensor changes? Break free today with Eversense.
For important safety information and to learn more about Eversense, please visit eversensediabetes.com/safety.
That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
Interesting. Why New Zealand? Why'd you go there? And then also, like, how quickly was it did it fulfill, like, oh, this is why I came here?
So I went there because if you just Google like an idiot, best places to cycle in the world, New Zealand's going to come up on like, half the articles.
Yeah.
And it lived up to the reputation. There were quite a few tour cyclists there. They have a lot of bike paths that are unpaid too. So I could actually take mountain bike routes for about a third of the trip. So single track was about a third of my riding was on single track, which I found much more fun. And I also, the trip in general, I just needed to get away. I was ready for something different. I actually had to, give notice to a very good job. And at the time, it appeared that I had to give that up. Ended up getting hired back at that company when I came back like 3.5, 4 months later.
You always working out a deal for yourself. We'd be biking and you'd be like, yeah, I told them this. But they offered me a job when I got back for a 20% raise or something. I'm like, how's this guy always working out these deals for himself?
I did get a pay increase. And again, maybe that's just dumb luck. But it also, if you commit to something, everybody was putting up barriers, but it worked out. It was like once I committed and people knew that there was no going back, all of a sudden doors opened too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I had actually planned though on that New Zealand trip for a buddy to meet up, and he had to bail. So this is the first time I'd done any sort of tour cycling or very long trip by myself. Because before I'd done that biking trip with you, and it had been so fun to have a friend, and so I was really worried about that too. But what ended up changing the trip really mentally was I started finding these campgrounds, and they're government, funded campgrounds. So you only pay $5 or less, and there's really not even a facilities. It's just like a safe place to lay your tent, and people can bring just their stuff, and it's more of a community layout.
Wow.
And I learned if you stay in those, the New Zealanders, the Kiwis, they're just like legendarily cool. Even though their country at the time had like a lot of tourists because it's their summer, they would make you food and just chat and give you drinks, and that's when it started to change. Is when I found ways to converse with the people better, because then they're excited about their country and they're like, oh wow, you're gonna be passing this way. Don't take that main road. There's a path that goes through here. There's gonna be a hot spring, 20 miles down the road that's not on any map. You need to stop in there. And all of a sudden, the Kiwis, the locals, were helping to guide the journey, and I'm very glad that I didn't have a super firm route to follow.
That sounds awesome, just to have those campsites just kind of to look forward to, and to have kind of the ability to go where you want. What was one of your favorite experiences there in New Zealand? You got any story with maybe meeting strangers or something interesting happen?
One of just the most memorable moments is I'd made it to the South Island on New Zealand, and I've been through some beautiful sections. I ended up on the west coast, getting close to the Franz Josef Glacier, and it's starting to get a little bit dusky, and I could see on a map that I looked up before that there should be one of these campgrounds ahead, so it kind of links into that campground vibe. And so I roll in there, I'm just another guy on a bike, and I kind of pick out a plot. And one, it was beautiful. There's this little dock going out to this lake, and there's like somebody way out in the lake just swimming it. And then there's this group of 5 or 6, I jokingly was like hippies, and they're just singing all these old-timey songs in perfect harmony, maybe like one guitar, just having an awesome time. And it was beautiful. It turns out they're actually a family, and they like are semi-professional singers, so they'll even do some tours. And they just camp in their RV, and they sing, and they invite me over, and they're like, hey, we got another single guy, who just kind of rolled in here by himself. And they introduced me to this guy, Neil, from England. He was traveling around in a car, and he's inviting me to hang out. And we actually ended up meeting up several different times throughout New Zealand. And it's just these wild, funny scenarios where you roll up and, there's people singing and and making food. And it just became a big community. And this is New Zealand. You're 5 miles away or so from the Franz Josef Glacier. So it's like this glacier that almost meets the ocean, and it goes through this huge valley with like 1,000-foot sheer walls and waterfalls. And I've never been to Yosemite, but I've heard it's like a mini version, kind of that vibe where it's just the big walls and the waterfalls, and it's got this glacier coming down the middle. And so, you just think about like one 24-hour period in New Zealand, and that's why sometimes you can't shut up, because it's like, and then that happened, and then that happened, and all of a sudden you just want to go on for all 45 days.
Wow, man. And now how hard was it to just be alone in that trip? Because I know that this was kind of the first real big one for you to just literally travel across an entire country by yourself.
So we covered the benefits of being alone, where you're actually even more approachable. So people want to watch out for you when you travel with someone else. Like, oh, they're taking care of each other. They've got each other's backs. When you're alone, people do approach you, and that was very neat. But there's a tough side too. A lot of nights, I only think I stayed in bed, one night. So I tent camped every night. And sometimes you just kind of be stashed away, and you'd be hearing noises in the woods, and you're trying to read or fall asleep, and it just takes a minute or two. And then, conversation, just a lot of hours on the bike, where it's a little bit sad that you're not sharing those moments. Like, you're looking at stuff, and you can take a picture and put it on Instagram and Facebook, but the moment's different, and not having someone to like recall that moment with, that's kind of sad, because sometimes it's just something that would be really cool to share with someone. But overall, I do think it was very, very healthy and good for me to do it alone. It left me with a lot of confidence, a lot of can do. And now when I plan adventures, I take more of the approach of, hey, I'm going to do this, and I'd love it if you come, but it's not going to stop me if you don't.
Yeah. It's an awesome lesson to learn, because, it's what keeps a lot of people from doing stuff. And I understand, being alone is definitely scary. I would say there's probably a lot more times, and I've been alone, that I wish someone was there than if I had been with someone and wished I was alone. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but just really out of safety. But then you realize, like, that situation probably wasn't as dangerous as I imagined it to be, or as I thought at the time. I was just freaking out a little bit, you know? Like, what kind of things do you have to worry about in New Zealand? There's no bears or anything. Strangers,
There is
I guess.
actually no creatures that are harmful to humans in New Zealand.
Nothing at all. I've heard something like that. Really? That's crazy. It's like, it really is paradise.
Nothing that can eat you, no poisonous snakes. Like, unless you, like, the most dangerous thing that can happen is a bird poops on you and you get salmonella.
Okay. Well, that's not too bad. I guess strange people's about the only thing you got to worry about, I guess.
That's actually real, yeah. New Zealand, again, it's known for pretty safe people, but they do kind of nab stuff out of your bag. I had zero problem with that, but that was one thing that a lot of other cyclists talked about, like, take your valuables out of your bag.
Dang, man. Now, I think I remember a story about a cave or something while you were there. What is that about?
So you talk about being alone, and safety is an aspect with being alone.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong, having someone else there is really important. So there was one day, and I don't say this super lightly. I've done a lot of quote unquote dangerous stuff, but I always felt like the risk was I get severely hurt. But there's been almost never in my life where I felt like, ooh, this is playing with life and death. Because I try and not play with that line. That's not my game. But I was having an awesome time biking. At this point, I'd gone out of my way through the west coast of New Zealand. I'd been on this highway that's like the whole time you're just on the Pacific coast, and you got the mountains on one side and the huge waves, and there's all these beaches you can stop at. And I spent the night on this, it was still being constructed. It's like inside this house because the wind was really high. So just like I put my tent inside one of the concrete walls because it was a vacated construction house. Really pretty spot. Woke up that morning and there's supposed to be a trail right next to me that'll lead to some caves. So I leave my bike and I walk the 2 miles up this river valley, and there's 2 caves. So there's like, I think they called it north and south. So the north one, it's real small and had tons of stalactites. It was beautiful. And I'm using I think I had a headlamp and my backup light's like my cell phone light. Because I figured you go into a cave, you better have 2 lights.
Right.
So I come out of that, and the entrance to the south cave is so much bigger, and there's a big sign saying, don't go in here, unstable. There's all these fallen rocks. But it's a nice day and stuff, and I'm like, okay, don't yell too much, but I at least got to check this out while I'm here. So I go in, and it's just a much bigger cave, and it had a lot of passage options. But I'm going in and being pretty smart. I spent some time in caves, so just taking note of kind of each turn and how far I've gone. And then I hear like falling water way back in this cave, and I just get excited because I love waterfalls. And I'm like, no way, is there gonna be like a river, like a big waterfall in the middle of this cave? And I just kind of get so excited. I'm moving quickly and had to do some kind of sketchy stuff over what appeared to be like my light couldn't see the bottom of these like crevasses, and you're like either jumping over them or skirting along the side of the rock. And what I wasn't taking note of is like my path wasn't very linear. Like it wasn't like an obvious, this is the path the cave goes. Like I was making my way. So I go way back into this cave, and sure enough, like there's just this falling water, and as far as my light could shine up and down, it's like this waterfall. It was amazing and so cool. And I'm like in there, and you can't even take photos of it, like the mist in the air means you can't use flash, and without flash the photo doesn't do anything, but just loving it. And then I turn around, and within like 1 or 2 turns, I'm like, oh shoot, I was a good 30 minutes back in this cave with quite a few turns, and I realized I hadn't paid good attention at all to the way back. And again, there's these really huge like crevasses inside this cave, so you had to be careful. And all of a sudden, basically pitch black in this large cave, I was struggling to find my bearings. I'm not someone who gets lost easy or anything, and I just felt like this massive panic attack coming on, and I had to talk to myself. I was like, no, like you cannot panic no matter what. Like calm your heart rate down. Remember. And I just sat down for 5 minutes and just thought about the path. But I still, it took several hours for me to get out of that cave by trying each route. And I would like leave markers and try one path until I realized like I'm not recognizing anything. And thankfully, saving grace, actually, one time I thought I had taken the wrong route back. So I was heading back and I'm like, no, I remember going over this ledge because it was real tricky. And it just had looked different in reverse. And that was actually like the moment several hours later in this dark cave with a helmet light that probably didn't have much battery left and the flashlight on my cell phone. I finally felt like, okay, I recognize this spot and I'm going to get out of here. But it was weirdly, compared to a lot of the more visibly scary things, that was actually, if I think about the scariest moment of my life, where I felt like that just, and it wasn't until you're out of there that you even appreciate how bad it was, because I just wouldn't allow myself to think about it. And it might not sound like a lot to a lot of people, but it just took a lot of mental. It was like, whoa, okay, I'll never do that again without really marking my route well and probably taking someone with me into a cave.
Well, dang, man, that's I think Johnny Cash has a story about that. He got lost in a cave one time in like Tennessee and was praying like, Lord, if I get out of here, I'll never do anything bad again for the rest of my life. And man, that is it's scary. The scariest things don't have to be the biggest, you know what I'm saying? It's like you can slightly miss hitting someone head on at an intersection and just think, oh my gosh, that moment can change your life. You know what I'm saying? Getting lost in a cave is a big deal. I mean, I'd never realized that it was that bad. I mean, we could have gotten a story like, hey, Jordan's lost in New Zealand and just never heard from you again. Good Lord, you could have fell in one of these crevasses and just been gone.
Yeah, but one thing I love about New Zealand, walked out of there, got on the road. It actually rained, so I pull over to like a little shelter. Guy walks out of like what looked like a house on the side of the shelter. He's like, come on in. And he's like giving me some drinks and making me hot tea. And we passed over the rain chatting, and he was super interesting. And then you leave there and all the rain turned every hillside along this coastal highway into waterfall after waterfall. And the sun came out, and it's like the day ended just beautifully. And that is the highs and lows of New Zealand. It's the trip was just, the scenery was phenomenal.
So that trip was pretty impactful, huh?
Very much so. Time alone on a bike too, with no one to chat to. You have to confront a lot of things. You have to think about it. And it made me appreciate the beauty of nature. It made me more comfortable being alone with myself. It really was. It changed my attitude towards a lot of things.
Now, I know that was a handful of years ago. What was it like getting to the end of the trip and getting back home?
So, fun part with it was afterwards, I ended up selling my bike to a guy I went mountain biking with locally in Dunedin, and hitchhiking to Christchurch and flying out to China where I met a friend. And New Zealand's a pretty expensive country. And I'd always gotten plenty of food, but I was always hungry because you're cycling. Well, food in China is like dirt cheap. And I just remember like every second I had eating 10 meals a day that were humongous and spending like $5 doing it. And
gosh, that sounds awesome. Was it good food?
Oh, it's the best. Like everything is fresh cooked in front of you, and it's all fried and stuff, but man, it tasted amazing. And that was actually a really good ease back, because when you cycle, I was doing a lot of miles in New Zealand and it's very up and down. So it was good to like do a lot of hiking in China and be with a buddy, and it eased me back slowly where the physicality level dialed down at a good pace. Yeah, when I came back to work, it actually gave me a really good appreciation of work. By the time I came back, I was so ready to be at my office job and be working with coworkers and solving problems, because I do enjoy working, but I enjoy it so much more when you come back from a little adventure. It's like you sometimes forget that there's a lot of benefits to being a local in town, and that solving business problems and stuff is actually its own unique deal.
Was it hard to make a judge? Like, were people more or less interested in your trip than you'd expect them to be?
They were so unrelatable.
Oh, man, I thought it was going to be something like that.
they were interested, but it's always like wow, you're crazy, and show us some pictures, and that's really neat. But they just don't. That it was just a topical conversation of, oh yeah, this is crazy Jordan. He just came back from a New Zealand bike trip. But they struggled to relate to why I went or what I got out of it, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And that's a huge theme, whether you've traveled or been on vacation or you do an adventure somewhere. When you get home, the time that you were gone, how long you say you were in New Zealand? 40 something days?
New Zealand itself, 48 days, and that whole trip was a little over 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So 3 months on an adventure where every mile and every face is brand new. It feels like a year. Like it feels like a whole separate lifetime chapter of your life. But when you're at home, kind of in your routine, 3 months can go by in the blink of an eye. So that people don't realize, just if you've never been on an adventure that took weeks or months, you don't realize just how much can actually fit into that amount of time. It's a book worth of information and stories you want to tell that the average person just won't even know what they're missing, even know what, like, how much could actually fit. I mean, we just talked to a guy on the show who just rode across the Pacific by himself on a 2-person rowboat. And I honestly, man, I kind of was just glossing over questions. And then Paul's here. He's staying with me right now. And he was like, I was telling him about it. And he's like, that is crazy. And he started going into like, this is what that would require. This is kind of the mindset. This is totally dangerous and nuts. And I was like, dang, you're right. I was just kind of glossing over questions, thinking like, oh, that's crazy. You just rode across an ocean. But no, you rode, like, doing something like that it deserves a lot of respect and a thought to appreciate. That is quite an achievement and can't imagine everything you saw and experience, But it's hard for people back home to really understand that, for sure.
Big time, and it really is a lifetime. It almost seems like another world. And I don't think every adventure has to be 3 months or a long period. But it is a little different when you are completely separated from everything, and that adventure, that time, is the only thing you're doing.
Yeah, it's like 100% into it, and then 100% out of it. What an adjustment! So yeah, man. So you didn't stop the adventures there. I know you maintain a pretty robust professional career. You just got a job where it's going to cause you to literally move clear across the country. So congratulations. But what does your life look like since that New Zealand trip?
I haven't done anything quite that long, but if you stack up the last couple years since then, it's been really fun. I'm not sure how much detail you want to get into, but we took on the Colorado Trail Race. It's like a 550-mile, supposed to be bike race. I'm not sure if we could call it that for ourselves, but from Durango to Denver. And I know Mason's take is a little different. We came in a little bit unprepared physically, maybe even mentally, because that route was true single track for so many miles and very rugged. But it still is I'm very glad I did it. The scenery up high in the Rockies and some of the photos that I was able to take, because just the weather and the lighting and the views were spectacular. Mm-hmm. It was stunning. But you might have some comments on that trip.
It wasn't my proudest trip. I think it was because I was in a pretty bad headspace during that time of life back in, I think I was 2015. Yeah, I think I was pretty depressed at the time, and this trip was kind of like a remedy to try to fix it, and I was just honestly pissed off the entire time, and I hated it, and I was cold. It was terrible. But it was also, looking back, the pictures you took were just unbelievable. And so, adventures, not every adventure's got to follow this script for sure.
So you might have to edit this out, but I have to tell this story about Mason. We're a long ways into this trip, so at this point we're very tired, and there's like I think it's only like 10-mile section where you go straight up the back of Breckenridge and back down. Mm-hmm. And you climb a lot of elevation, then you bomb back down, and it's in this 550-mile race. It's like a very small amount of miles. So we're just grinding our way up this hill, and it had been a long night before. I'd like almost broken my thumb. So even I was very angry that day. And so we're grinding up this hill, and it's beautiful, and we're, for the most part, cheery, and but a lot of hike-a-bike and a lot of slow pedaling, and we're so happy to get to the top because check it out, we've got 5 miles of guaranteed downhill. We're about to lose 2,000 to 3,000 feet of elevation. Yeah. This is gonna be awesome, and we're on these pretty lightweight hardtail mountain bikes. When most people doing this race were on full suspension. So we get to the top and you start going down, and it's just grade A single track with these like big forced, drops, and you have bags on your bike, and it's just beating you up, and I'm hurting, and I was maybe a little more comfortable on those kinds of trails though, so I'm just trying to take it as fast as possible. I'm like, I just want to bomb down this and kind of enjoy it and just take the beating as it comes. And so I go a good mile and a half, and I stop, and I kind of had just gotten below the tree line because we were above the tree line, and I stop, and I'm getting some water and just making sure Mason's close by, because if something happened, I don't want to have to hike, half a mile up there. And these two really nice hikers are coming up the trail, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, we're doing, they ask, you look pretty rough. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, we're biking the Colorado Trail. And all of a sudden, like, you hear this noise from a distance. It's like, I'm going to change the words to make them friendly. Dag nab, mother trucker, just every sort of loud, obnoxious term. Oh, it it was honestly more like noise, like, ha. And these people's eyes, these two hikers' eyes get wide-eyed, and around the corner comes Mason, and he sees them, and all of a sudden the look on his face changes. He's like, oh, hey, how's it going, guys? Beautiful day.
Yeah.
And it was a funny moment on the trip where it was just a tough trip. It took a lot of mental. It was tough, but that was so funny. The look on those hikers' faces, they just hear like angry Sasquatch coming down the mountain.
I was rageful out there. It was ridiculous. I thought it was going to be therapeutic. It just made it worse. I guess that's why my memory's not great of that trip, just because of how all that. But that was funny. I totally remember coming around the corner and being like, "Oh crap!" They heard every word in the book, and I threw a rock too. I threw a rock, not on the trail, but I hit a rock and like endoed over the bike, and I just pick it up and overhead like a caveman, just like threw it. You stupid rock! It was rough. Golly.
But to our credit, we finished it, but we also hitchhiked about 100 miles.
Yeah.
But one of your interviewers on the show, I think it was Bart. He picked us up.
Yeah, that's right. We were running out of time and had to cut off the trail a little bit, and ended up meeting a guy that ended up being on the show twice. So randomly, you never know, man. You never know. It's good story, good stuff. But yeah, man, we've had some good times together. And, after that, I'd say we didn't do a whole lot together, but, after the Colorado Trail and you've, progressed, you got married, you just had a child as well a couple weeks ago. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What has been your adventure needs and personally since doing those big trips? Because a lot of people do these big trips early on, and then they may or may not ever get the chance to do it again. And I'm not saying you won't ever get the chance to do it again, but I'm saying like life just changes and you change with it. What for you do you think is your adventure needs, and kind of what do you have on the horizon with adventure sports?
Right now, and for the last couple of years, adventure has still been a very important part of maybe what you could consider the complete picture of work and family and life balance. So I've done a couple smaller, like 3 to 4 day bike packing stuff. There's a guy here in Florida that has some real cool routes that I've done. More commonly, almost every Saturday, I bike single track with a group of friends. It's become a community. Mm-hmm. Florida itself is pretty fun. A lot of good canoeing and springs. And so it's just been little camping trips, a day or two, canoeing and biking. And it just helps me appreciate the other aspects of life a lot too. Sometimes I'll end up going a couple weeks without much of that, and it can sometimes be hard for me to maintain like a healthy balance or perspective, I get real antsy. So for me, adventure just keeps a different perspective and has become an important part of what I do. It's not that it has to be anything insane or some giant like checkbox, like I biked, across America or something. I would love to do that, but it's not real practical right now. But I still really enjoy just getting outdoors, enjoying the weather. You mentioned I'm moving to Seattle. I'll be moving in a month, so I'm very excited to mix things up a bit. Fresh mountain biking there. I'd love to climb Mount Rainier or some of the other good hiking trails that are in the area. Mm-hmm. So it's been about staying fresh. My wife likes to be outdoors quite a bit too, but she just likes being out there. So we'll kind of do more, canoeing for a day or going to the beach, and it's a good time for us.
Do you find it hard to kind of strike that balance between wanting to continue being just doing these big adventures, being a true adventurer, and also being pretty serious family man?
It is. Sometimes I still have kind of a dream, having spent time in Ecuador. I'd love to bike from Tierra del Fuego, the very tip of South America, all the way up to basically Ecuador. So kind of half of the Pan American highway. I think it'd be beautiful. And, I'll just have to time that right. I just had a kid. That's not the kind of journey that my wife would enjoy for a long time. And so you'd have to find that balance. But one thing that I can share, it's not for everyone, but I do consider myself a serious professional. I take my career pretty seriously. This move to Seattle is a career move in a field that I really enjoy. And I take family seriously. We just had a kid, and my relationship with my wife, it's important. And I think without these adventures, I would actually really struggle to be a serious professional and be a serious family man. I've actually found with my job, my adventures and getting outdoors keep my perspective very fresh. It's easy to think about things in a way that's not just, this is what the textbook says. It keeps your creativity high, and that provides genuine value for your workplace too. Okay. And so sometimes, and it keeps my endurance or energy levels high too. I go into work feeling pretty fresh, and I have a goal to accomplish things when I'm there and want to get it done. And sometimes if you just spend too many months in a row only at the office and then at your house, you just slow down a bit mentally and physically. And that's going to happen to everybody in cycles. But I hope that for the most part, you can get that outdoors time and get that refresh that gives you the desire and the energy to also work through tough, challenging work problems.
Yeah, I mean, how many word problems probably feel like that day you were stuck in that cave, It's like, okay, I've got to find a route to this. It's problem solving. I can't panic because, we all know work can absolutely be panic inducing, not just being stuck in a cave in New Zealand or being chased by a bear or something. And so those same principles are going to carry over. And I guarantee that today's employers and today's workforce is really beginning to realize, okay, we need people like Jordon who have this balance between physical adventure as well as career experience. Because, there's nothing that can teach you resilience or self-dependence like an adventure can.
Totally agreed. I actually leave that New Zealand trip on my resume during that 3-month period intentionally because I like it in that conversation. People can't help but ask about it. And I'm like, hey, I dealt with a lot of unknown, tough situations there. And I learned to deal with that. And I think, in an interview, it's like, I think that in a workplace, the same thing happens. You're going to find a lot of unknowns, and you want people that can be okay with the unknown and find ways to solve the problem instead of running to a manager and saying, I don't know what to do.
Right. No manager on that bike trip. No manager helping you get up that mountain somewhere.
So it's fun. And I'm just looking forward to what the future holds. I think staying flexible, and there might be a grand adventure shortly. There might be one a little farther out, but taking it step by step too is just part of the life adventure.
Any parting words for anyone who is struggling to maybe they might have the opportunity to do something big or maybe not, and they're struggling to balance work, life, and adventure?
Ooh, that's dangerous. My advice isn't always the best,
All
but
right, well, take it or leave it, people.
maybe just think for a moment about what really is important to you. So if that adventure that you've been wanting to do it's been in your head and it's not going away and it's important, again, just focus on that and commit to it, and a lot of things will fall into place. But if it's not some big adventure you're looking for, and maybe you're just feeling your balance is a little off, then just start riding your bike to work every other day, or find a hiking trail that you can hit in the evening after work, and stuff like that alone will just change your entire world.
That sounds dramatic. That really does. It'll change your entire world. But honestly, it's crazy, man. You just say, all right, I was planning just to spend the next 3 hours on the laptop before going to bed, but you know what? It's already dark. Just taking a walk around the block, or like you said, go out to Carter Road, or go out to Green Mountain, just walk for 20 minutes. It's amazing. It's amazing how refreshing and how much of a reset it is, and how, John Muir was right. Every walk with nature, you get so much more than you're even looking for. I don't understand why it's so hard for me to get out the door all the time,
Exactly. That's what it comes down to.
Well, you're not going to have any short list of opportunities when you're up in Seattle for places to go explore at any time, any time of the year, anywhere, for any amount of time. It's there's just so much to do around there. So I'm super excited for you and your young family. And man, we'll probably have to be visiting soon, and come see us on your way out here.
I will.
Well, Jordan, man, thanks for joining us on the show. And I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Thanks for having me on, Mason.
Yeah, man. Yeah. All right, y'all, get out there and have some fun. First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to growing the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
Introducing the new Chocolate Cream Cold Brew. Light, sweet, and silky chocolate cream cold foam meets bold, smooth Starbucks cold brew for a delicious way to make the most of your summer day. Your happy is here at Starbucks. Order ahead on the app.
Tired of guessing your glucose levels all the time? How about a better way to manage your diabetes? Introducing the Eversense E3 CGM system, the only 6-month continuous glucose monitoring system. With real-time glucose readings every 5 minutes delivered to your mobile device and exceptional accuracy over 6 months, Eversense E3 gives you readings you can count on.
For important safety information and to learn more about Eversense, visit eversensediabetes.com/safety. Accuracy evaluated in adult populations with 2 calibrations per day or less.